So like the seasons of the earth, each stage in our human life cycle is a season that is predictable and symptomatic of how the eternal time factor propels us forward towards physical, emotional, and spiritual growth. And while each of us has our own unique personal experience of ourselves as we journey through life, there is enough similarity in our human experience to inspire great thinkers and sages and pundits to ponder these life cycle stages as a means of unlocking life's not so obvious eternal truths. So if we think about how our life experience changes throughout a lifespan of, say, 100 years, that each decade presents us with a specific challenge to wrestle with and to resolve as a means of preparing ourselves for the challenges of the life cycle stage or decade that follows it, we can get a clue as to the goal of human life. Whether we are aware of it or not, each of these natural life cycle challenges are tied to the psychophysical ages of our bodies and minds, and these built-in challenges of life are designed to inspire us to grow towards greater and greater wholeness as human beings. And if we reconcile each life cycle challenge in a healthy way, our essential spiritual or essential selves will gradually be rescued from our conditioning that holds us hostage in our temporary bodies. So this process is often called by scholars as the science of self-realization or self-actualization. In the same way that a plant naturally grows towards sunlight when there is nothing obstructing it, if we continue to bask in the emanating light of the source of all light throughout our whole life, from the cradle to the grave, then we will gradually and systematically realize ourselves as the perfect, pure, joyful, wise persons that we eternally are, yet have forgotten due to our over-identification with our temporary material bodies and minds. In other words, if we resolve each life challenge that comes our way in consultation with the Lord of all life, who is residing within the core of our hearts and the hearts of all others, then we will be ready to meet the challenges of our next life cycle stage. Now, in the ancient wisdom texts of India, it describes a person's life cycle as taking birth, growing a bit, reproducing something, then remaining for some time, then dwindling or declining, and finally ending in death. And these life cycle stages are a process that every living being goes through, whether they're an animal, a plant, a human relationship, a group, or even an organization. Now, researchers who ask questions like, why do people do what they do, share this ancient understanding, and they have concluded that what we focus on and use our energy for is closely connected to where we currently are in our life cycle stage. For example, in the first 10 years of life, our experience of the world is very much dependent on the quality of our relationship with our primary caregiver, who is typically our mother or a maternal figure. Not always, of course. In this stage, we unconsciously decide whether we can trust the people in our world and whether we feel safe, depending on how consistently love was provided to us. When I use the word love, I am referring to more than just being cuddled and given affection, although these are important aspects of communicating to a child and helping them feel cared for. What I'm referring to is the notion of love as an action, such as offering another person acceptance, appreciation, of course, affection, affirmation, and allowing, which means allowing a person the freedom to make choices as they explore and learn about life. In the first 10 years of our lives, we feel if we are for physically, emotionally, spiritually, and socially, we will naturally feel hope and trust that our world is full of possibility and that life itself has our best interests in mind rather than intending us harm or abuse. In the second decade of our lives, say from the 10 years old to the 20s, nature propels us towards developing our will and taking ownership of pursuing our autonomous goals that align with our personal values. It's a time when we question the values of those around us who have up until now been the controllers of our lives. In this stage, we begin to push back on those inherited values, and we test them to see if they actually do align with our current human experience. These teenage years are fraught with the urge to be independent and choose for ourselves. Meanwhile, we don't feel very equipped with sufficient knowledge and skills to take full responsibility for our lives. And this stirs in us feelings of shame that somehow or other, through the force of time, we are being pushed forward, whether we are ready or not, whether we like it or not, from innocent children into the awkwardness and clumsiness of our not yet adult bodies and minds that are not really mature enough to handle the rapid fire thoughts and feelings that are emerging within us. If we have managed to live through our teen years without too much damage from the misuse of our independence, we arrive safely to our 20s as healthy, self-determining adults, ready to meet the challenges of our third decade, which is characterized by our need to find our life's purpose. When we enter the life cycle stage of the 20s, we are naturally faced with the choice to take initiative in pursuing our purpose in life or to be swept along with no direction at all, hoping by some miracle we will find our way without any effort. If we reach the end of this decade and start comparing ourselves to our self-initiating peers who have proactively found their life purpose, we might feel a sense of inferiority, or like we are what we call in English Johnny's come lately, who have shown up late for the party. We might begin the decade of our 20s determined, for example, to never marry and instead live a carefree life, unencumbered by the responsibilities of work and family. But by the end of the 20s, if we have not found our purpose, or a life partner for that matter, we may feel a sense of inferiority as we compare ourselves to others whose life plans seem firm and clear in conformity with the social norm of settling down, having a family, and becoming a productive member of society. Now, it may well be that throughout this decade of the 20s, we begin down a path that turns out to be a dead end, changing our direction again and again as we figure out where we are headed in the journey of life. And as it turns out, this is a natural process of discerning our way forward. So it's something we have to do. If by the time we reach 30, or the 30s, this decade, we have settled on our purpose in life, that is, what gives us joy, what we are good at, what the world needs, and perhaps what the world will pay for, then we are ready to rise to the challenges of that decade and work really hard at developing competence in our chosen life purpose. And as we work on developing this competence in our chosen life purpose, we realize that without becoming industrious in our work habits, we will fail to achieve the level of excellence in our occupation that we seek. And this fear of feeling inferior or failing at our life purpose is all too often a motivator for our becoming the top of our game, or at the very least satisfied with whatever level of competence we have achieved. After a decade of working so hard, in our 40s, we begin to wonder whether who we have become up until now is really who we are at our core. We typically begin re-examining the values that have informed our life purpose when we were in our 20s. And then we question whether our so-called life purpose we've been killing ourselves to achieve is an authentic expression of who we really are. We begin wondering whether this is all life has to offer us, or has some greater purpose more worthy of our pursuit. In this decade of the 40s, we begin searching for what our unique lives have to contribute to humanity. That is more than just struggling to survive and living up to social conventions. Some behavioral scientists call this decade middle essence because, similar to adolescence, in this decade, our bodies begin to change right before our eyes. We start to notice we are beginning to decline. We get a few gray hairs maybe, or our bones begin to ache a bit when the weather is damp, or we notice our muscles are kind of starting to get flabby and that we are developing a little paunch around our belly. And if we haven't noticed any of these symptoms at the beginning of this decade of the 40s, then certainly they have begun to appear. It then starts to dawn on us that our bodies won't last forever and that we are moving into the autumn of our life now, and that the winter season is right around the corner. We ask ourselves, where did all that time go? We become a little serious to know who we really are in contrast to who we thought we were up until this moment. If we have resolved the challenges of each decade up to this life cycle stage in a healthy way, nature will nudge us with the sneaking suspicion that who we thought we were before this time was not the real me. And we then ponder, who is the real me then? The person who is always there for me when everything else changes in my life. If throughout this decade we resolve our dilemma of identity confusion and find our true identity as the wise, eternally joyful persons that we are, we strive to remain faithful to our true selves, who at our very core is part and parcel of that Supreme Personality, who is actually also the source of all life. Now, having acquired knowledge of our authentic selves in our 40s and aspiring to be faithful to ourselves, we cross over into the next decade of life, the 50s, where learning how to be a truly loving self becomes our interest and focus, as we start to discover that at the core of our very selves is not only the source of all life, but the source of all love as well. And as we tap into this deep well of love inside our own core, it starts to burst open and compels us to increasingly extend ourselves in love to others. By now, if we have married and had children in our 20s, they will be well on their way towards finding their own purpose in life, and we might be feeling some relief from some of the worries and responsibilities of parenthood. If we are empty nesters whose children have left home, we might be struggling with feelings of grief and isolation due to not knowing where and with whom we should repose all our loving propensities. Perhaps by now a spouse or a loved one who we depended on for relational intimacy has died or become chronically ill, and we wonder with whom we should be engaged with in intimate, loving exchanges. And suddenly we find ourselves wrestling with the inner conflict between feeling isolated and devoid of meaningful relational intimacy and reaching out to widen our circle of heart-connecting relationships beyond the borders of our family members and personal friends. If we have risen to the challenges of each life cycle conflict and resolve them on the side of our best interests, then our capacity and desire to love will grow to include the whole human family, who we think could benefit from our loving it, if only for the sake of love, and realizing that it was love that healed our broken places, and that now, a bit on the mend, we owe it to ourselves and others to pass that love along. If we sufficiently resolve this life cycle challenge between isolation and intimacy, and expand our capacity to love in healthy ways in our 50s, and have developed the virtue of love for the sake of a higher purpose, then we are ready to take up the challenge of the 60s, which is becoming a caring self. As we wrestle with what it means to truly care about people, we may struggle with the internal conflict between becoming what's called generative, which means to extend what we have been given in our lives to others, which often involves teaching what we have learned out of a concern for the well-being of future generations. The other side of that conflict being our becoming stagnant, or disconnecting ourselves from life and simply abiding our time until the impending winter of our life arrives at the moment of death. This act of gathering together our resources for the survival and flourishing of the next generation is demonstrated in behavior we actually observe in squirrels in the autumn, who carefully gather and deposit their nuts inside the earth so that they may draw on them later during the bitter, cold, and barren season of winter. And this reflection on squirrels is the inspiration for my talk today. The importance of taking time to pause, check in with ourselves, and identify where we are in the life cycle seasons of our lives. To take stock of what insights we have learned or are in the process of learning, whichever life season we are in, so we may arrive safely to the goal of all seasons, to become the eternal, wise, joyful persons that we actually are. To prepare ourselves for this future dwindling journey towards our physical end, if we live through our 70s, then the attribute we need to develop to be a wise self, which we learn when we practice integrating everything we have learned in life up until then, rather than falling into a state of despair or disgust with life, which very often happens as people age. And if we have resolved this inner conflict on the side of wisdom in our 70s, we're then ready to develop the quality of grace, or becoming what's known as a graceful self in our 80s, by wrestling with the inner tendency to control and let go and just be in life. Becoming a graceful person involves us accepting and perhaps feeling relieved by the awareness that survival is a losing battle, that the force of time inevitably moves us forward through the seasons, regardless of our endeavors to stop it. And once we bow to this all-devouring time factor as the supreme controller of our lives, we can relinquish our endeavors to control our lives and live in a state of grace, and feel grateful for every moment the Supreme Personality of time has granted us. And this prepares us for the final decade of the seasons of human life in our 90s, should we live to such a ripe old age, which is to wrestle with the inner struggle between struggling to survive, surviving, and our desire for eternal life back home in another place where life is permanently joyful, full of wisdom and love. So, in conclusion, I will end where we started. how to be mindful that the autumn of our life, this physical time we have right now in East Coast where the leaves are falling and are very beautiful, is a wonderful time to pause and check in with ourselves and do this hard work of letting go and integrating everything that we've learned up till now. Maybe we do it as a year, if we think in terms of every year as a full life cycle, to reflect on our previous spring and summer and fall, where we are now in anticipation for winter, figurative and perhaps even realistic death and rebirth into a new spring. So I'm aware that the best use of a topic is to churn it through discussion. So I'm going to stop here and just open it for reflections and any insights that you have on what I've said. Certainly it's not complete what I've said, and there's probably many, many other perspectives. So I'm opening it to you to add your truth to this important topic.
So go ahead and put your questions, your comments into the chat box to me, and we'll open up this dialogue. Does that sound good, Rambhoru Dasi?
Yeah, sure.
You can just give people a few minutes to type in, but while they do that, since we don't have anything yet, I just want to thank you. That was so beautiful. Your talk is like touching my heart, all the different life cycles. And one thing that really stood out to me was when you said survival is a losing battle. And once we bow to time, we can relinquish our desire to control and become grateful to the Supreme. And yeah, I just was kind of wanting to churn this a little bit to hear more from you on this particular topic. That how can we even, if we see every year as a full cycle, right? That we can learn some of these lessons before we get to our 90s. We might not get to our 90s. I feel like this is a lesson that I need to learn right now. Time is of the essence. And I'm thinking of Prahlad Maharaj in the Srimad Bhagavatam telling his 5-year-old, co-students, like, now is the time, don't wait. So no matter what life cycle we find ourselves in, how can we like practically learn this lesson and experience it and apply it in our lives?
Thank you. Well, of course, if you're wise like Prahlad Maharaj, you will just get it, and there's so many wonderful persons I was thinking about, in Srimad Bhagavatam that have, right from their birth, they figured it out. Narada Muni left home at 5. Prahlad Maharaj was 5, and he got it, that yeah, life is temporary. And what's the goal of life? Well, my life is to realize myself and to develop who I really am, which is a perfect, pure spiritual being. Most of us, however, and that's where we kind of started the Hare Krishna movement. Prabhupada inspired us by his own energy, and we gave it all up. I mean, we were 16, 17, 18. We were young whippersnappers, we thought, yeah. And as time went on, and as Srila Prabhupada obviously left this material world, and we were like left to our own devices, all of our false understandings of ourselves rushed in. And so the beauty of this movement and what Prabhupada gave us is that you have 2 paths. You can either take the quick path, which is just to decide, begin at the end. You just begin with the end in mind, or you go through like what we call Varnashram Dharma, the system of rules and regulations that pace your renunciation till you finally get to the end. Um, and the beauty also of the seasons that we have, and yearly seasons, you not only have a life cycle of a year, but you have a life cycle of a month. Certainly as women, we understand the moon cycle and how much impact that has on us. And it can also be a moment where we are forced to pause, because of our cycle. We're sitting there taking a break and maybe resting or rejuvenating ourselves and cleansing and all of that, or daily, because you have the cycle of the day. The sun is coming and going, and each time the sun arises and sets is another day of dying, in fact. So back to your question, how do we do that work? And if you want to start with even the day, you can think in terms of uh, sitting down and making a proposal for your day, making a goal. Every manager, even in the ancient times, by sunrise has their day organized. They write on a piece of paper, what do I want to do today? What is important? What is my priority for my day? How will I spend my energy? And then, as the sun sets on your day, as you're maybe lying in bed reflecting on your day, you might be thinking, oh, did I actually accomplish those things? Did I get off track? How far away did I get off that list? Prabhupada used to say, make a plan to keep, and keep the plan you make. And that helps us stay on track with making, first of all, deciding what is the goal of life as the big picture. If you have a camera and you have what is the goal of life, and what is my goal within that goal? And if once you've identified my goal within that goal, now you can break it down into increments. Okay, how am I going to use my time and energy today to move me closer to my goal within that big major goal of life? So that's kind of how I would attack it. Did that make any sense to anybody? I mean, is that something people might do? Yeah.
That made complete sense. It was so practical.
Get your paper out.
Yeah, it's like, okay, that's something that I can do every single day. So thank you. Okay, and just looking here at the chat, um, Anita says, I really enjoyed hearing how our life cycle is broken down. It gives me a sense of relief and puts one at ease for not needing to have it all right or perfect all at once.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, but what I was excited about as I was exploring this notion of the decades, I mean, there's literature on it as well, and part of my study as a supervisor had to get my head into human development. But the fact that Krishna has built in to nature, if we're slow to get it, that he's pushing, time is pushing us on, Krishna's time, and rubbing our noses in these lessons, whether we like it or not, they're in our face. And you know it's happening. We're confronting it. It's confronting us, and we have to learn in spite of ourselves. So we might be slow. Get
Ye-
it?
Yeah. So, yeah, and Rukmini says the self and transition so helpful and not getting stuck in where my issues are now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have one question here. For those of us who haven't reached certain life stages, how can we let go of attachments related to that stage? For example, myself and several friends now in our mid 30s and have yet to find spouses and have children, yet the desire remains. Should we begin to let that go? And if so, how?
Ah, that's a hard question for me to answer about your life, because you are in it and I'm just sitting outside, and that's going to be different for each of you, whether you decide to let it go or not. I mean, in this modern age of Kali, it is said that what is it, the 30s are the new 20s, or we say the 60s are the new 50s. So, maybe you're actually really in your 20s still. And knowing that people often marry late or remarry late, much later even. I met myself in the hospital, people who were just getting married at 70, on a second marriage or third marriage, and they finally found at the age of 70 the real love of their life after having married and several spouses who had died on them, and they met the real one. So I can't really give you a clear answer on that. If your heart is still burning and yearning for love in the opposite gender, then I wouldn't give it up, and I would also bring it to uh, Krishna in terms of prayer and self-examination, and really get clear in your mind what you have in mind, what needs you're looking to get met, and what kind of personality you think is going to meet them. Because I think that a lot of times we don't know what we desire. We aren't very clear about it. And therefore, the universe doesn't know how to meet it. I mean, man proposes, God disposes. So, Krishna really is depending on our having a clear desire so that he can respond. But sometimes we don't know what we really want. And then we find a spouse or a life partner, and they don't really fill that need. And it might not be really the need for a spouse. It might be another need that nobody can meet at all. So you might think in terms of, if it's isolation and loneliness, if it's love and belonging that we're really yearning for, and we're hoping that a spouse is going to meet in us, we might also need to look around and see whether or not those needs can be met through like-minded little communities of people who are sharing our mission. At least that's my experience. That my need for love and belonging is not met so much in a spouse, and never has been. Yet I feel very fulfilled in sharing my need for love and belonging and mutual exchanges with like-minded people who share my path. Um, which is why I do these small groups. I teach in small groups because that need, even though the people on the small groups are married to other people, they come to the small groups because that's where they feel true connection. Often your spouse is the last one who knows who you really are. That's what I found. So I don't know if that helped, but that's my thoughts. Yeah.
Thank you, Rambhoru Dasi. I have a follow-up question on that. You said that we need to have a clear desire, and so the universe doesn't know how to respond to that. So we need to get clear on our desire. How do we balance that with the fact that we don't always know what we need? We don't always know what's best for us. I know Rukmini always tells me a prayer that I am just like a child and you are my father, and you know what's best for me. May the right doors open and may the wrong doors close. And I don't know what personality I need in a partner, but you please send the partner that is, best for me. So how do we balance those two things, like recognizing that Krishna knows, or the divine knows, the universe knows, the supreme knows what's best for us, and having a clear desire on what we want?
Well, I think it's a both and. I don't think it's a either or. That's certainly my prayer as well, opening the right doors and closing the wrong doors, because I do trust that supreme Lord who's in my heart knows everything I need before I can ask it. I think we have to invite the Lord to take charge of our lives, and I think we often don't because we get impatient. Like, it's not happening. I'm praying, it's not happening. I really doubt that Krishna knows what's best for me, and it may well be that Krishna doesn't deliver what we think we need, the way we think we need to have it, and in the time we need to have it. And it may well be he gives us something else besides what we have named. And that requires us to trust that whatever we are being given is the right thing. When I first got married, I didn't have a child right away, and I was like, all my friends who are in their 20s were having children, and I thought, it's not happening quick enough. And so my husband gave me the Gornita deities, and I thought, oh, oh well, yeah, I could make Krishna my child. I'm not sure I really want to at this point, but I mean, it would because I had something really clear in mind. But gosh, what a beautiful thing! Krishna gave me himself as a Gornita deity, and I could have, had I been really surrendered to Krishna's will, could have at that point just maybe just had to worship Krishna as my son the whole life. I didn't, but anyway, I wasn't ready for that in my early 20s. But I think it's a both and I think that what Krishna is sitting there all the time waiting for us to invite him to be part of our process, and then be patient and trust that he really is, if we have sincerely invited him to take control of our life. And that's a check that can be put on your life cycle list every day. Okay, did I pray to Krishna to guide me and to help me and get clear? I mean, just pray for clarity, have that conversation. I have no idea what I want in a husband or a wife or whatever it is I'm looking for. Will you know if that person shows up? You may not know because you haven't really deeply thought about it. Same thing with a spiritual master. If you're looking for a teacher, or even having a child, in the Ayurveda, there's a whole process of preparing the mind and heart to conceive or invite into the womb a soul who will benefit human society. It's a whole process, of visualizing and being intentional about, exactly the attributes you want in a child, what they look like, and this and that, to get the consciousness ready to receive that soul. So I think that's a really good indicator of how the world works, from subtle to gross. And we need to spend some time on a subtle level to manifest or to invite into our world what we really desire. Yeah. And let me just say that if we've established the goal of our life, really gotten clear about what is the goal of life and our goal within the goal, then it makes sense that whoever it is we're trying to attract into our life may be a journey person or a companion in that goal. That might be a smart desire to have, to pray to Krishna for, someone who will really benefit me in my journey towards self-realization and love for God. Uh, yeah, yeah.
Thank you. That's so helpful. I can say for me personally, and I'm sure so many of us, that's just really helpful and practical. I'm going to read one comment and one question. So the comment is, I am laughing at the ability to pause during our moon cycle. In these times of Kali Yuga, workings, balancing family, it almost seems the opposite, that we have no time to relax and pause.
I know. Is that a question?
That's just a comment. That now I can read the question.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah, so this is from Carolina Chandravalabha Dasi. Many times in the life of a Krishna devotee, we may start certain life challenges early: marriage, kids, and learning as we go, perhaps entering schools later in life to get a degree that supports our life as a devotee living on the material plane of the modern worlds. Sound like that lineup of the aging through the decades can be rather chaotic. How to support oneself in our sadhana when there is so much to do and do and do. When practicing sadhana, this is such a good question. When practicing sadhana, I find I need to tune in and then tune out to continue my day. Is there any advice for the quick way to tune into one's sadhana at different times of the day?
Yeah, it is hard. And this is Kali Yuga. And I can only speak from my own personal realization experience. I certainly don't know your situation. I know I had children and had to do a lot with children, and living in the temple with children, and having to manage stuff in a thriving temple with children. And I know how hard that can be as well. And this may sound really simplistic, but my only way to survive is going to bed early with my children. I mean, at 6 p.m. I was in bed with my son. 6 p.m., no kidding. My day, I decided I divided up from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. was my time with family and my children, and 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. was temple time. And I lived in the temple next to the Brahmacharini ashram. In those days, we had such things. And I shared a bathroom with them. So we had to juggle all that stuff with child bathing in diapers and all that stuff. And I had to go on the altar with a baby who had poopy diapers. So how do you do that? I had to go to bed with him at 6 p.m. We'd get in bed, read a story, and he'd go to sleep. And then at 1 a.m. I'd wake up. 12 or 1 a.m. I'd be up. Get my rounds done, read an hour. First, I somehow, to get my head into chanting my rounds, I need to read just to get me inspired. So I'd read an hour, chant my rounds, do my laundry, and by 6 a.m., I had everything done. I thought, if my child wakes up or I die today, I'm set. I'm ready, you know? And somehow I was able to manage juggling so much of that stuff. And I'd have to go on the altar. And then he'd wake up. And if you touch your child with a poopy diaper, you have to take a shower, and they have to take a shower before you go back on the altar. And I tell you, I would have probably had a nervous breakdown had I not started in this way, getting the most essential things done first without distraction. And everything else then just unrolled in a natural way. That's the only thing I can say that I did to survive. I followed that pattern also when I went to college. I followed the same life cycle stage. When I was 46, that's the 40s, where you start to question. Now, after being in the ashram for 30 years, trying to question, well, I worked so hard. Is this really where I am or who I am? Is this an expression of who I am? I felt like I had reached a glass ceiling, and I went back to school at 46, sitting along, 20s and 25-year-old students. And I didn't know the language. And so I was go to bed at 6 o'clock, sometimes even at 4 in the afternoon, because I'd be so tired, and get up at midnight, 1 o'clock, and do all that stuff while everybody was asleep, undistracted time. I remember when my son went to Gurukul, and I was living kind of in the Brahmacharini ashram with a bunch of women. We don't have that so much anymore. I did that program again. And in order to get this piece to do that, I had a face mask. I would be sleeping in a room with maybe 6 other ladies, and they're up at talking, and you know how that is. And I had a face mask and chainsaw earmuffs, and underneath that I had 32 decibel earplugs, so I couldn't hear anything. And I'd get in my sleeping bag with my mask and my earplugs on like this, and while everything was going on around me, I'm just in my sleep at 6 p.m. And so that has served me well in being able to accomplish a whole lot of stuff, while everybody's sleeping. Because once your head is reached absorption, there's nobody that can really distract you. But you've got to get in that zone before everybody else wakes up. And I think that's why Prabhupada lived like that, because it's when everyone, the modes of passion and ignorance are kind of exhausted and sleeping, that the mode of goodness really emerges. And we see that. I can feel that, at night. Yeah, you can try it out. I have a student who's just experimenting with it. She said, gosh, all my problems have totally gone away. And she's in Russia, and we have this Australian and South Africa times. It's like, well, we want you to do a workshop. Can you come? It's going to be like midnight for you if you come. No problem. I'm up anyway. Okay. She said, all my problems have totally disappeared. I have absolutely no problems. It's like overnight, because my mind is totally absorbed in hearing and chanting, and I get that done, and everything else takes care of itself. I thought that was a great witness. Yeah.
Your advice is so practical. It's amazing.
Try it out.
Yeah. I'm like, wow, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
Um,
Have a slumber party. You could have a night watch, get everybody on Zoom and let's say I'll beat you there at midnight and see what happens.
yeah,
Turn
I
into a pumpkin, yeah.
I've been living in ashrams for the past 8 years, and I also have my mask and my earplugs, and
Yeah. Survival tools, yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's amazing. And it reminds me of when you have a glass jar and you put all the big rocks in first. Like you put your priorities in first, and then after you get the big rocks in, there's still room to fit the little pebbles. They still fit in. Versus if you put all the little pebbles in first, then you're going to try to get those big rocks in and you're not going to be able to get it in.
Great analogy. Great. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of that. So, thank you. So we have another question here from Radha Cornea. In earlier years, women tend to turn their focus inward to immediate family and community. As we get older, especially in areas where extended families are separated, women have time and wisdom to share. But many of us struggle on how to shift our field of activities. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, gosh, I'm not sure. I'd like to hear a little more about that. Can she say something else more about that? Maybe her own specific example? Let's see.
Sure. Sure. Should I unmute her or ask her?
Yeah, yeah, let her talk a little bit. That'd be good. Help me.
Cool. I'm just gonna find her and unmute her.
Oh,
Okay, there you go.
I
Radha, you
know
can.
you.
Hi, Krishna. Please accept my obeisances. Thank you so much, Rambhoru Prabhu. This is
Oh,
such an inspiring lesson. I'm just thinking in terms of, Vaishnavis who've really been at home, their focus has really been on family, and all of a sudden, they're in an empty nest situation. And I see a lot of them kind of hesitating to put themselves forward. If you're not used to offering counsel, giving advice, and maybe people don't even know you that well. Like how do you reach out back to the community to offer support?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. How do you do it, Radha?
I've always had a big mouth, so it's not a problem for me. But I just see a lot of women that I know have a lot to share, and
You're absolutely right. And they're underserved and under recognized. I mean, it may well start with getting them to write something, having
mm,
people in the community recognize they have a wealth to share, starting to get them to talk and record them talking.
there you go. Yeah.
Gradually people do get to see, oh my goodness, they're sitting on a ton of life experience and wisdom, and we need to get it. It's an interesting analogy. When a flower is blooming, it's right before their death. The flower dies right after it blooms, and it's worked the entire season to get to the bloom. And so elder women we call them crones, wise women. They have so much, and they've blossomed from integrating all that stuff. And so societies just need to recognize, let's pick their brain. What can they, like, get them to start talking. But some people are not talkers, and they're a little shy to talk, and they may express their wisdom through art, through music, through painting, through just making an enormously perfect offering. I'm thinking right now of Kalangana, who I used to travel before I was married on Sankirtan with in a bus. Me and Gokul Rani would travel around England in a Sankirtan van. And she died recently, but she ended up being the deity sweet cook in Bhaktivedanta Manor. And I remember her, from the days we were in a bus, but she became so perfectly artful she took cooking to a new level. She developed how to make cheeses, and when you got something from her that you would eat, you could feel this direct connection from Krishna. So I'm thinking she spoke with her life. She didn't do a lot of lecturing. You wouldn't see her on the Vyasa-san or anything, but just by looking at her work and being in her presence, it spoke everything. So I would encourage Radha. I don't know where you went on the screen, but oh, there you are. But I think that if we can raise awareness of our society to lean in and notice what people are doing with their lives in the twilight of their life, 60s, 70s, 60s is a real typical time to be generative and creative and be a giving back self. And if you've learned how to sew in beautiful ways, get do that. So you young guys need to step up if you want to get some of this nectar, because there's a lot of nectar floating around that is just not captured, and it may not ever be captured if we don't reach out. It'd be lost forever. I don't know if I helped then, Rada. Yeah, yeah. What else? What's on your mind, you guys?
We have another question here from Betty Ann Tamburn. I find the events of the current administration and the pandemic has really put a big damper on those who are in their 20s, which is bringing a lot of depression. How would you guide them?
Oh, you're asking me. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm living with someone who is eating, drinking, and sleeping politics, and yeah, I don't go there so much. You know, I know it's all bad, kind of. It's all bad in some ways, and yeah. I pray. That's what I pray for, God to guide them and do what's best for our country. We're living in troubled times. I recognize it's not much different than how it was back in Krishna's time, where you had Dhritarashtra and Dronacharya, and you had all these people who, demonic rulers. We're living in a very ignorant time, and we've always been in an ignorant time, and we just maybe are seeing it more glaringly because it's on television all the time. But at some level, change happens through grassroots. I'm not sure who you vote for is going to make a difference. And I do see what's happening now in our political world being tied to a transformation of the whole society, which Prabhupada predicted would eventually break down. The American culture is pretty much going to break down and rebuild. And while it's all very depressing on one side, just like winter, its death is coming. It's a real thing. But the hope is, and what we believe in, is that simultaneously birth is happening. And so there's a lot of really good regenerative things happening alongside all that stuff that's going on the television through politics. There's a huge international movement for a new way of living, living that is affirming to the earth, affirming to taking care of Mother Nature. And so, whatever policies are made, you can't stop the majority grassroots who are really the voice of the future. So, I'm kind of going with that. Knowing these people may superficially have the power to destroy, but when you destroy something, you're just reconstructing. We're as a world recreating ourselves. So I'm not too depressed about it, because it's necessary to bring new life. Is there has to be a death and a destruction of all the unsustainable stuff that we've created that's false. And Prabhupada predicted that. Yeah, it's temporary. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, there's no material impediments in the practice of bhakti yoga. I always wanted to make that a t-shirt, that no matter what's happening in the world, there's always a way forward. So thank you for sharing that wisdom. We have another question from Sai. Sadhana Allen. Hare Krishna, Rambhoru Prabhu, thank you for sharing wonderful wisdom. In 60s, as I approach this, you describe my dilemma. What were your personal challenges and how did you overcome them at this stage?
When I turned 60,
Yeah, I don't
let's see,
know. I don't know
yeah,
how old you are.
I'm going to turn 68 in January. Can you
Wow.
believe? Yeah, so I'm getting there. I'm getting up there. And everything I described in life cycles, it's interesting because I just started this Karuna Care thing last year, but I've been working on this project in St. Camilla's since 2010. So in 2010, if I'm now 68, how old? That's 10 years ago, 58. So learning how to become it became a natural awareness of how, gosh, what heals the broken human hearts is unconditional care and love, and what the way forward is that I should now extend what I have been given to others, and that just occurred naturally. I wasn't even aware, of these life cycle states, and that clarity in the 60s is the time when you become the caring self. And I thought, that's so predictable, and I thought it was so unique, and it was sort of what people do when they get in their 60s. They start to realize death is imminent. My old age has started. I don't know when I will die, and I started to live as if this were my last day and make plans as if I were going to live forever. That was what Prabhupada taught us to do, even when we were in our 20s. You should live as if you're going to live forever, live as if this is your last day, and make plans as if you're going to live forever. So, it's about going through your stuff and getting rid of stuff that you haven't used or worn for a year. Simplifying. If you have to move, you should be able to pack in an hour, that kind of thing. Just really getting down to basics, because what I became aware of is that if I died today, I would leave a lot of unfinished stuff for other people to pick up and figure out. And indeed, since 2017, I've had to manage my parents' unfinished business. And it's not actually very considerate of other people who have to come behind you and clean up your mess. And so things that need to be put into place for yourself so that you can, if today is my day to die, that I'm ready. I've bequeathed my toothbrush and my shoulder bag to whoever it is I want to bequeath it to. I don't have stuff that I want other people looking through to throw out. It's part of our duty that we don't become, as much as possible, a burden on the rest of society if we can help it. So doing some of that work, making a will if you need to do that, or a living will to let people know if today you were to go to the emergency room and they put you on life support, do you want to be on life support? And who is going to make decisions for me that I trust if I'm on my deathbed? What do I want there? And the reason I say this for devotees, that may seem like a kind of a stupid thing to do, because of course we want people singing for us and chanting for us. Of course we want that. But I have seen differently that sometimes if you have not communicated to family or parents or loved ones who have kind of some legal connection, that they come running in at that moment and take you home to a place where there are no devotees. I've seen that. And so if you haven't stated it clearly what you want, you may find yourself swept away to Tanganyika, in the banana groves, where there's not one soul around who knows how to help you transition. I've seen this in the Los Angeles temple in the last few years. So I'm just saying that's the work to be done in the 60s, is to get real with death, comfortable with it, and do some practical things to put your life in order so that you're free from the worry of it, to be free for caring more about other people. That's all I can say about that.
This next question really actually is a perfect follow-up to that question, because you were just describing, what we can do in our 60s. But this question from Kamala Priya Devi Dasi, I really appreciate, is Hare Krishna, dear Mother Rambhoru Prabhu, thank you for your beautiful presentation. As you are a leading person in devotee care, may I ask you, We can see how many of our senior devotees are getting old and need care, even hospice care. What would you suggest for an individual younger devotee and for the whole Iskcon community to do to give professional help to devotees on the way of leaving? What do you think how much responsibility Iskcon should take? Which steps should individuals in Iskcon as a whole do?
That's a big question, and I've asked that all the time. And there are a lot of people thinking about that and making attempts. And you've got to figure out where the boundary of ISKCON responsibility is. It used to be really clear. Everybody lived under one roof. You got your room, board, and travel expenses in exchange for uh, service and whatnot. You got those things. But as people have taken care of themselves and maybe got jobs or whatever, there's no guarantee that ISKCON's going to be able to do all those things. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have things in place. And I know in India they have the Bhaktivedanta Hospital, and they've tried to do this hospice in Vrindavan, which has had a lot of challenges with it, in another country to do that. And but what I'm seeing in my interest is that there are people who are naturally drawn to end-of-life care that are getting themselves qualified as hospice nurses. And of course, we have Vaishnavis care with Sangeeta, who is training people. And there's just some people who are absolutely drawn to this. And even though they may not be professionally certified in some ways, I've seen this in New Vrindavan. There are several people who that's just a goal of theirs. It's just to take care of elders. And they do that. They just kind of offer their services, and in exchange there's a reciprocation perhaps of a donation, or maybe Medicare pays for something. In LA we have a couple of rooms where if you are within a month of your life, the temple will let you stay there so devotees can care for you and sing for you. But what I've seen is that the families have had to come and engage or pay for someone to do the physical grooming work. Devotees will come and sing and whatnot, but they can't do the physical work. But there are a few in our movement who do that all the time, and they go from one family to the next and help their mom die and stuff. Certainly we need more. I think it's a calling. I think you can't legislate it. I don't think how you legislate this tender work. It's a very tender, sensitive work to take care of someone when they die. I would like to have a space where that could happen, and I'm thinking of New Vrindavan as a obvious place because it's got a lot of property, and it's kind of central in some ways. But it takes money and manpower to organize that, and so far, no one has had the willingness to take that commitment up. It's a huge commitment once you start an institution of that sort. But I think it's coming, maybe. Yeah. Any other thoughts about it? I'd be interested to hear, Rukmini, if you have a thought, or Rajalila, or Radha Dasi. I know that's in the air a lot, that question. Does anybody have any? Don't. I appreciate the question. I'm not sure I have the answer. No. Yeah.
Oh, Rukmini, I think you're muted. I asked you to unmute.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that that's such a good point, and I think maybe the word should just be put out, that because sometimes people do have resources, and a lot of times people say the reason they never gave a donation or a charity was because no one ever asked. So to put out, that's a kind of an emblem in fundraising, right? So to put out the word that this is something, put it out to Krishna and to the community and to the world, to the universe, that this is a need, and this is somewhere where you might be able to help in a small way. I love what you said about how can we legislate such tender work? But someone might have the ability to care for a dying person. Someone might have the ability to finance that care.
Right.
So people can put their tender hearts to work in different ways if the word is put out maybe it's an article that someone, maybe someone would write for Iskcon News or whatever
Yeah.
we're Urban Davy. Write something for Urban Davy, and we'll post it. And there may be people just thinking, we've got all this extra cash. What am I going to do with it? Who knows? Or someone may be very inspired by what you just said, that maybe I have that compassion to care for a dying person.
And they're different aspects. People, when they say devotee care, it's a big topic. It's not just end of life care, but it's also throughout life care, life cycle care, emotional care, physical care. People have mental health issues that are untreated and unrecognized and unprocessed, and who knows how to lean in. I'm working on the emotional part, and since I've been listening and training people how to listen, we have been absolutely flabbergasted. My students who are just graduating now in a week, they're like, I had no idea that under the surface of the smiling, singing devotees, there was so much yearning and heartbreak and unresolved trauma. And oh my God, the effects of Kali Yuga are deep. And we are a rehabilitation center, the Hare Krishna movement. I call it Iskcon Rehab. I mean, we really have the solution, and we need to know how to apply the medicine in ways that are not hurtful. We need to be able to put that medicine on without doing more damage, and so that takes training, and it's hard to train too. It's not easy. Prabhupada said, my work is very easy. I can make devotees, but your job is really the challenge, is how do you train and how do you educate? So it's, to me, it goes down to education. That's really.
I wanted to ask something also. Am I still unmuted? Maybe?
No, you're unmuted.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking, there's so many beautiful Vaishnavis, beautiful ladies in their late 30s or maybe 40s or whatever, and feeling like, oh, where is that husband? Where is that partner that I've wanted to find? And where is the women's ashram that was supposed to be provided? But I often think about Yamuna Devi and Dinatarani, and Prabhupada wrote this beautiful letter to them saying, association can be 2 or 200.
Right.
So maybe just find, maybe if that perfect husband hasn't appeared and you are in your late 30s or early 40s or whatever, I'm not saying this to younger women, but maybe share an apartment, share the rent on an apartment with someone who shares your mood and your mentality. You can read together and you can spend time together, and maybe that that ideal marital situation is not there for everyone, but maybe there is someone who you could share your time and your expenses with. And
yeah,
just a thought.
I agree. I think that's a good way forward, to think in terms of creating little pockets, sharing homes. That was a model that Prabhupada started for college campuses. We have that in Gainesville, where you have little communities of people. It's kind of gotten big community now, but sharing places, and particularly with people who share your passion. If you have your passion is to go out on Harinam, find other people who like to do that and do that with them, and maybe share an apartment with them if that's convenient or saves you money. That's certainly caregivers. I think what we found in the Karuna Care this semester, we started in April, and we have now 2 groups and new groups starting in January, is that there are people who don't realize other people have the same passion and challenges, and one from different countries, and now here they are sitting in front of each other, and it's like they know each other. It's just such a beautiful thing. So if you can find your what we call them intentional families. Certainly every group you belong to is a recreation of your nuclear bodily family, and every group can be an intentional family, and that can be created by connecting with like-minded people, and we have, even in Iskcon, different moods. People have different moods in their devotional life, and that's okay. And if you find somebody who has the same mood as you, hang on to them. And if they love the same service that you do, well, do that. Well, you got a thing, you got some community going on. And then you have something really important to talk about. They've created each group. I've got 2 groups right now, and they have their own little culture, And I'm now taking only 5 at a time, rather than have a big group and break up and things. They want to have that little secret spot, and they have a WhatsApp and everybody posting and all that stuff's going on. And they've never met each other physically in person. These people don't know each other. And in the last week, which is absolutely predictable in a group life cycle, because everything has a life cycle, now we're in our grief around, oh, I'm so sad this group is ending. Who's going to support me now? And how are we going to do? And so we're having continuing education. It's a real thing, is that the life of the group is dying, because now this group as it is right now will never be the same. Oh, but we'll take birth in a new group and we'll keep going and get energized and inspired that way. And that's what we're going to do. Reborn. Other thoughts?
Radha Devi wanted to say something, so you can go ahead and unmute.
Please say something, Radha Dasi.
Thank you. With just a couple of thoughts. One is this idea of, developing relationships with like-minded Vaishnavis. Whether you get married or not, you need to do that.
Yeah. Oh,
the expectation that all of our emotional needs are going to be met by one person is so unfair.
Right.
So we need support from other Vaishnavis. And then, you may get a husband, he may die, he may get sick, who knows? And then just going back to that point about end-of-life care and finances, my husband and I have seen a lot of reciprocation through the crowdfunding on Facebook when somebody's facing an end-of-life challenge. It is amazing how the devotees reciprocate. And it seems to me to come down to 2 things. One is that a lot of small donations make a big donation. But the other thing is it's a person. Even if they don't know that devotee personally, they can relate. So that idea that if you don't ask, you don't get, I would say that for sure.
And tomorrow it'll be you, the giver,
Right.
It's a loving exchange. Yeah. It's you, the giver. What I'm doing also, and anybody can do this. And I think the students in their own countries, in their own towns, they will probably set up shop as a Karuna Care companion wherever they are. And often people want to reciprocate by giving a donation. So what I'm doing is I have a separate fund that people can donate into that fund for scholarships or for offering medication for devotees who are in an emergency or in a tight spot, or books for prisoners and paying postage and all of that. And I can keep it separate. And, if you have to do taxes on it, it's very clear. You're keeping that financing separate. And now you have a fund. If you have someone dying or someone in trouble, that's money that's meant specifically for devotee care. And so I think that's a really good idea to have, if you're asking people for donations and you have some kind of service that you make a devotee care bank account, and anytime people donate, it's special for that. And then you have freely funds to offer that you're not going to miss because it's not yours. Yeah.
Rajalila would also like to say something.
Rajalila, unmute yourself, madam.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rambhoru. It's so wonderful to be able to sit and listen to you.
Oh, it's so nice to you.
Oh. Yes, I was really appreciating how you brought to awareness about some of the projects that are giving attention to caring for people that are, in their last days. You mentioned Los Angeles, and there's several different places where devotees, I know Sandalmani in in Arizona. She's like amazing in how she has a specific room, and she personally arranges to have devotees to be cared for whenever she learns that somebody is not feeling well. Actually, Karnam Rita Prabhu is there with her right now.
Awesome.
So yeah, so all over there are people that are giving some attention, and yes, as Rukmini Prabhu said, there is a need for finances. And I believe I just saw recently where, as you mentioned, Rambhoru, there are places where devotees are setting up funds now to be able to have devotee care fund, where if it's needed for whatever it may be needed for. In some cases, people need funds just, to just to educate the devotees in terms of taking some such courses or something. That's devotee care.
It
And
is.
so I am just appreciating that there are many things that are getting done. However, one of the principles of devotee care is to take responsibility for the things that we see that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And I believe that that's an area that needs the education. How can I take responsibility for what I see that needs to be done? What can I personally do? And
Great.
that way any one of us can start the ball rolling, even though, somebody else may take it over, which is wonderful, and and get more reciprocation. But even if we start very small, like you were sharing, Rambhoru, with just one person, just saying, okay, I can maybe start doing this small thing in terms of caring for devotees. And in that way, we can then get others to join in.
Yeah.
So, so I'm appreciating you for starting that ball rolling. Thank you so very much.
It's something. Thank you. And what I'm seeing, and what I'm in dialogue. They've reached out to me from Mayapur. If anybody, I don't know who's on this call, but and there's someone who's trying to head up these different departments. And what we've realized is that just like you have a fund for the cows, a fund for the deities, a fund for all these departments, there needs to be a specific fund in every temple just for devotee care, because money and manpower is the key to it, as you've said. Yeah. Back to you, Champakalata. Thank you, Vrajalila, for sharing. I love so much to see you there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's this has been such a wonderful discussion. There's one more question that from Shamala Kishori Dasi that I also really resonate with. So we want to hear from you. What advice can you give us for finding our life's purpose?
Oh, I that's a common question, and it's a really good one. And I'm asked that a lot. And I think I very, very softly mentioned a process. It may not be your process, but it's a process that makes sense to me. And I would start with finding out what gives me joy. First of all, what gives me joy? What do I love doing? And then I would do even if I weren't paid for it. In fact, you could make yourself a piece of paper with 4 columns in it. Start with your list of things that give you joy. It may be many things. Then the second list right next to it is, what do I do well? It might be, some people love to do stuff that they don't do very well, like singing. Some people love to sing, but not so much they're good at it. Or they love to cook, but their food isn't very good. So, but anyway, write what you're good at, and that may not match with what you love. Then the third list is, what does the world need? Make a list of things the world needs. And the fourth list is, what will the world pay for? And if you can find something that lines up between your joy, your passion, your vocation, which is what you do well, what the mission of what the world needs and what the world's willing to pay for, that's your profession. Is trying to get paid for what gives you joy and you do well and that the world needs. So that's what I would do. Any hunches, Shamla Kishori? It's good to see you there. You have a hunch now that you've heard all that?
You can unmute yourself, Sham Kishore.
She's stunned.
I have a few ideas. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. I'd love to hear it.
Well, we have a few more minutes, so that's all. I read all of the questions, Rambhoru Dasi, but there's just a bunch of comments. So mostly thanking you, but I think I'll go ahead and read a few of these comments.
And you know, it would be really helpful, and I do this at the end of each of my classes because we've been listening for about an hour. And all of that is going to go away if we don't consolidate it, okay? So, and reinforce it. And the way we do that is we each of us go around and we name one takeaway. What did I hear that will be useful in my life out when we turn off this button? That would be interesting to me to hear. What was your takeaway today?
Should we have people unmute themselves to do that?
Yes, unmute yourself. It's a free-for-all. Unmute yourself. And here's the way we're going to do it is whoever starts will share their takeaway, and then they're going to say who does next. So you can't escape. It'll take too long if you wait for everybody him and haw. So let's start with you, Champakalata, because you're a C, and that was kind of alphabetical. I don't see an A. You share what your takeaway is, and then pick the next one. That means you have to look at the screen and see what people's names are.
Well, I know that I'm already working on my list for finding my life's purpose. Those two things I'm already going to work on. Number one, the finding life's purpose list, starting with what gives me joy, and then number two, the schedule of going to bed early and rising early and getting our priority chanting and hearing in really nicely. Before the rest of the day. Those two things really stuck out to me.
Okay, well, pick somebody. Who's next?
Shamla Kishore.
Shamla Kishore. All right, you're up.
There were so many wonderful things, but one thing that stood out to me was praying to Krishna for clarity in life.
Awesome. Who's next? Pick somebody.
Nadia.
Nadia, you're up. I can't hear you.
There, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry, I was having trouble with the sound. What was the question?
You're supposed to share your takeaway.
Oh.
From today. You're muted again.
Oh, there we go. It said the host muted me. I have found this to be really inspiring, and I really enjoyed your talk this morning talking about the different stages. I was raised and born in a Bhakti family and stepped away for a little while. So I saw this and I was like, should I go? Should I not go? And it's exactly what I needed. In addition to the class this morning, I'm a yoga teacher and I teach about 7 to 10 classes a week. And just to be able to let go and surrender and, you know, take that class and have that that gentle, it felt like a mothering touch for me, like for my body and for my heart. And it's really funny. I pulled a card this morning, and the card was mothering. And I'm a mother. I have 3 children, but not that I have to mother, but that I need to be mothered. And it feels really good to be here today and to learn from all of you. And thank you very much for sharing your wisdom.
Hey, great. Pick somebody. Who's next? Pick somebody, Nadia. You have to pick.
Okay, I will pick Isabel Bilodeau.
Okay, Isabel.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My takeaway, I would say, was what touched my heart was the end of life, of this life, and how we want to go. And while you were talking about that, my partner was right in the kitchen, and I turned to him and I went, chant the Maha Mantra when and he's asking, a recording, will that anything, everybody, get everybody. And I have a meeting next week with my notary, or I don't know, in the States, it's probably the lawyer that takes care of wills and all that. So I think I'm just gonna write that in my will, that that is what I want, because I was right there with my dad. My dad passed. I was holding his hand, and we didn't have really a plan.
Yep.
Of, I was just there and holding his hand like we did in life, really, until he passed. And I felt maybe guilt, remorse. Did I do the right thing? Should I have? But I was not. I was not Krishna conscious at that time. He was very much spiritual. He was not Krishna conscious, but he was very much connected. And I think right now I realize that he's probably my guru. He was not in the bhakti practice, but everything he taught me was in the bhakti way, in the bhakti path. Right. So I just want to make sure when I go that I do the right thing.
Nice. I want to just ask Champakalata, I'm aware of the time. I know there's probably someone coming behind me. Do we have time for more kid takeaways, or do we not?
We have 2 minutes.
Okay, so maybe one more takeaway.
Thank you.
Pick one person, Isabel.
Okay.
Potluck. You're muted.
Sorry, Sarah.
Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi. So I have so many takeaways. I don't even know where to begin, but and I've told the last group I'm a counseling student working on my master's degree, and my thesis is on bhakti and how to use it within the counseling practice. So working with end of life is never something that I was not interested in, but how you've described it and explained it, it seems like an important piece that we need to consider a little bit more. I don't feel like enough counselors within my program are interested in life, and just within bhakti, it's just such an important piece of it that I think that I need to be more considerate of it, and I hadn't been in previous until now. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that.
Okay.
I also wanted to say I really appreciate you taking Erickson's life cycles and really explaining it in a way that is so much, just so much better. So
well, I tell you who did that, and I will tell you, if you want to really go deeply into it, a guy named Donald Capps. He writes a book named Decades of Life. He really brought that home to me, and
thank you so much.
Yeah, through the lens of bhakti. Yeah. Okay, so I won't. Yeah, I guess we're done.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful session, Rambhoru, Dasi. And so we'll stop here, everyone, and we'll end the meeting, and you all will be able to join